Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. Yeah, and the reason that I am tending to this AI, it's not my preference to derive information from AI. I usually go to this very accessible astrology.com website. Now, the reason I don't currently use an astrology program, it's not because I don't want to, definitely not because I'm not willing to invest the money, but because I'm going for an economy that is different in its making and processing. I tended to the topic of currency. Both me and a person who was involved with whistleblowing, I'm not going to go into detail, were severely targeted. I believe he was supposed to betray me because I tended to that. And that is beyond disturbing, and yet we cannot ignore the fact and the need to have a different culture around any type of profession, including astrology, and a different type of economy around that, let alone the fact that, hey, if they try to take my phone or they try to take my computer or literally my things, which is, by the way, I do have Mercury opposing Pluto, so having an annual complete purging of those things is something that's in my natal chart, so to be quite fair and honest. But it also makes it a different consideration where if I have to open another channel or if I have to um, completely transform the way I do finances, um, way more often than other people do, uh, there is there is a certain thing about accessibility that needs to be there. So usually I go to the astrosig.com. I also recommend that to beginner astrologers that don't yet invest a thing, although normally my recommendation would be is if you want to make money out of something, try to put the money in. Um, and here there is a trajectory where what I'm tending to is about alternatives to certain type of currency as well, and that is making my own strategy around finances a bit different. Okay, now to the topic of this episode. Um, and this is Jupiter retrograde from November 11, 2025 to March 11, 2026. So I look at the astrology of 2026 and I look at the retrogression first and then the major aspects. Why do I look at the retrogression first? This is something that is an easy to tell type of vibe. What we will be doing over, what will we be refining, and we already know that Mercury will be retrograding the water signs. Even from my previous episode, I think about the electric water. There is actually electric water. Um, there are electric fish that are, and those things will definitely be examined and explored during the Mercury retrogrades in the water sign. Now, I talked about the Venus retrograde in Scorpio and the Libra while having an astral attack that targeted me, which reminded me to talk about my thesis. So, an academic research, and is a pioneer. I can't say it's a pioneering because I'm sure that billions in academia and outside of academia had advanced the science, and we're just isolated from each other. So in that sense, let's call it a Dirac Fermi. Okay, if you were also doing something like that, then please know that I really honor you and that I would like to hear more of your work. And we can call it our Dirac Fermi when we talk about the scientific basis for proving and for showing that the things that people thought are invisible and they can get away with are actually incredibly visible. Mercury retrograde in Leo is a great sign to bring that into awareness. Okay. Now, Jupiter. When I was thinking about Jupiter retrograde, first of all, I had to get me a sandwich. And the first thing I was thinking about was we're not done with Jupiter in Gemini. And it's not necessarily a good or bad thing. Okay, Jupiter in Gemini was the devil's advocate. Jupiter in Gemini was um, looking at the applied form of religion. Okay, because Jupiter is philosophy, is ideology, is religion. Jupiter Gemini was a time where we had another wave of what people call spiritual warfare, and it's kind of like, hey, I actually liked Jesus up until now. What is going on? Okay. But also when we had a new pope elected, and he was wearing a lot of red. Okay, so it's kind of like, it's not unusual for the papacy, but we're usually not seeing that as secular people that don't listen every day to the Sunday Mass or to the daily Mass. Is coming from Roman Catholic Church or the Vatican. Um, so Jupiter Gemini was all of that. It's the praxis, the day-to-day presence of religion and philosophy, which makes that more tangible and accessible. Okay, think about the Habemos Papam and a person, and most people look into a YouTube screen at the papacy and the charisma of the person having to go through such a small screen. Okay, we dealt with that a lot in the COVID. Academia went completely, and Jupiter is academia. This is why it's coming on social. Look at how the retrogression discussion is leading to one another. Okay, Mercury applied technology, water. Okay, Pisces also to do with religion. Venus, the trafficking business and sexual taboos, and so on and so forth, and then academic research, and then Jupiter, academia, applied science, applied philosophy, applied religion. Um, it's just so natural, okay? They coincide, but it's just so natural, the way that the stream of consciousness works here. And so basically, we're not done with Jupiter Gemini, which means that we're not done seeing the practical day-to-day both sides of the coin of anything philosophy and religion. And this is something we're going to be tending to from November 11, 2025, where Jupiter enters the retrograde motion in Cancer. And the very fact that I have to look at that, even though ideologically I wouldn't turn to AI because I would prefer people to be credited for their AI, and then I cannot ignore the fact that in most fields, in all fields, okay, I went to astrology when taking a break from academia, so I stand behind my words in most fields, and one of my work was actually, my satirical work actually tended to the connection between grief, sexual boundary violation, and plagiarism. It's basically the stealing of the creative whatnot, and I did not know that this was actually conscious. Okay, that they do these things to steal the creative whatnot. Okay, so and I can't ignore the fact that in every scientific field, those things exist way before AI comes into fruition. And look at me, I have this website that I love going to, simply saying arrow 403 means that the server recognizes the site, is just not willing to bring the site to this computer for whatever godforsaken reason, from social engineering to hacking to maybe just, Peter's going over the site and updating things. This is Mercury retrograde. But that had created a need to kind of replace the data Mercury in a way that contradicts the philosophy or ideology, but also in praxis is kind of fitting that, because before we had us astrologers looking at AI, okay, saying, okay, well, that AI is probably more likely correct. You think about Google, and AI is kind of like the next phase of Google, with the good and the bad of that. But it's the same where you get an astrology from, another person, and they learned one trajectory but not another trajectory. So this is just a way of information. And when it comes to the accrediting and the benefits, then if our economy works by expendable children that are sacrificed, the first child of a family that is sacrificed, training of people are supposed to betray each other, people that try to swap the destiny or to violate sexually another or to come into a consensual sexuality even in order to later manipulate and siphon the energy to get the skills and the creative endeavors, which is absolutely not needed. Okay, we're a nervous system. Being exposed to different thinkers is definitely creating a sensitivity that allow us in the vicinity of those people, and also learning channeling practices can give us access that is on willing consent to certain type of trajectories. So all those practices are absolutely outdated, yet we can't ignore the fact that they were practiced, and now when we have AI, everybody's like, we're losing our jobs. We actually had an astrologer that was opening a platform. I don't know what's happening with that. There's supposed to be a platform like a social media for astrologers, but to enter in, you had to agree with everything that you say being basically siphoned into AI without you having any creative rights over that. And so, again, from the tradition that he's coming from, it can be something that we're used to in high-tech companies and people just complied with, and now we have the AI. So Jupiter Gemini definitely, Jupiter retrograde definitely will be the challenges of humanity and religion versus the applied fiscal trade form when it comes to ideas, because both Jupiter and Mercury are ideas and opinions and beliefs. So Jupiter is more on the belief side of the idea, Mercury is more on the applied side of the idea. Hey, I have an opinion, let's take an action about this opinion and see what is happening. And this is why Gemini is way more engineering. Okay, Gemini treats things as an engineering problem and is aware of the more concrete side of things, although it's an air sign, but it looks at the problems of Taurus, for example, before it, as problems that have both sides to the coin. Okay, think about the farmer revolution with Uranus in Taurus, and the way Gemini could view it as, well, weren't the farmers exploiting people that came to work, or refugees that came to work there, in terms of their working conditions? And the difference being is that the farmers own the land or own the right to use the land. By the way, in Israel, they do not own the land, but only the right to use the land, which is very important. And then they rebel because their work is taken from them, whereas the people that work for the farmers, they could never have this huge mansion and own the right to use the land for agriculture even. They would never have that trajectory of upward mobility, and yet we had the farmers' revolution and we didn't have the peasants' revolution. Although the peasants in the French Revolution had land, okay, which is something that now is absolutely not existing anymore. And yet the fact that it's not existing anymore is also a point of unification between many classes that weren't previously unified. Okay, think about the working class. Okay, a global concept of the working class. Okay, so anybody doesn't have like a huge disability to the point that they do not work. Even unemployed people are considered the working class. Okay, so not having a job does not mean you're not a working class. Not being able to work means that you're already in a different situation. And Jupiter will be co-present in Gemini with Uranus. So this is yet again another juxtaposition. When Uranus ingressed into Gemini, Venus soon followed, or I think Venus, I don't know if she followed right after or she was there already. I think she was there already. And then Jupiter kind of like, and then Uranus conjoined Venus, which was immediately value revolution and so on. Now Jupiter is going to have a little bit of a religious revolution being co-present with Uranus. And we shall not forget that Jupiter is also retrograde in Cancer. Now, because we're not in November yet, Jupiter has gone all the way to the 11th degree of Cancer. When did it even get to? Like, it seems like Jupiter just ingressed Cancer, and now we're in August, where Venus and Jupiter are going to conjunct next to Sirius, which is in the middle degree of Cancer. And it's like, oh my God, time is flying by um, quite quickly. Time is flying by quite quickly. And so let's take a look at Coffee Astrology, where they're going to show us the actual degrees. Okay. Uranus retrograde. Oh, I'm talking about, I won't, okay, that's not really, is it something 2026 here? I don't see it. Maybe I just need to move on. I think that this will be at the bottom of the page. No. Okay, we'll need to complete on that. But the thing is, first of all, November 11, Jupiter enters the retrograde motion in Cancer. December 5, Jupiter retrogrades back into Gemini. We talk about the last degrees of Gemini. March 11, 2026, Jupiter station direct in Gemini. We're missing the degree in the AI. And June 1, 2026, Jupiter moves back into Cancer. So this will, of course, it's an outer planet. We're talking about a 6-month cycle. And if I try to take a look at Jupiter in Cancer so far, I have to say that it went by so quickly that I didn't even get the chance to. Okay, it just went by so quickly that I don't have a characterization of Jupiter in Cancer. Like, things just happen so fast. I don't know what to say about Jupiter in Cancer. Okay, like, I made one talisman. I made a couple of talismans, I think, by now. And we're going to try to capture Venus before Mars ingresses into Libra. But Jupiter going back and forth in Cancer, other than the fact that it's going to meet the square with Saturn and Neptune again, which is dramatic, and other than that, I really don't have a lot to say. Jupiter squaring Cancer from Gemini was when Saturn was in Pisces, and for me that was a lot of big changes on social media, maturation of elections, okay, working with elections and so on. With Jupiter Cancer, yes, the square with Saturn is always a challenge of being optimistic and having a reality check. Saturn limits the expansion of Jupiter, and Saturn may have a reason to do that, and Jupiter may have a reason to resist that. So it's a creative tension that is needed. I think it is more the fact that Jupiter is not done with Gemini completely that that sets the tone. And so what is it that we're not done with? Big media scandals, big scandals, religious revolutions, um, big trade upheaval, okay, big hacks, Okay, anything Gemini, so scams, hacks, and so on. Um, Unfortunately, the topic of religious persecution can come up. Um, Big revelations and reality checks around practical day-to-day facets of spirituality and religion, particularly to do with children, because both Jupiter and Gemini are ruling children. And so Jupiter Cancer is usually about the family, the nuclear family, the nation state, the tribe, um, being benevolent towards kind of like the 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 close or the familial settings. And so the main challenge that's coming from Aries is the individual within the nation, the individual within the family. Families that are not usual in nature. Okay, I have parents with both my parents have Uranus in Cancer, and we're definitely not the usual structure of a family. Okay, also when it comes to fertility. Uranus rules something unusual, and Cancer rules the family. And so Jupiter is exalted in Cancer because it's benevolent and charitable towards its people. Okay, you think about the Piscean people that were born into really Piscean type of charity, and their complaint is usually that their parent or significant other that was so charitable towards entire humanity, but they felt neglected, in the best of case neglected. And I was thinking about it as well, how when it comes to negligence versus ritual abuse, even the people that suffered negligence did not grow as terrible as the people that went through ritual abuse. And so, yeah, it's just the things that I was thinking about today. So, okay, the best is to grow with a happy upbringing and loving parents. Yeah, but that is something that needs to that needs a revolution to bring. um, so Jupiter is about being benevolent towards the nuclear family, and we're going to be rethinking what does that mean. While Pisces is very much aware of the lack of distinction between that which is our family and that which is the humanity at large, Jupiter is about the sense of belonging into a family or a tribe that has some sort of religious or philosophical issues. I was actually watching a funny short earlier, which was about a guy that is absolutely Jewish playing a Roman Catholic to get the attention of a Catholic Portuguese person. It was a boomer. It was boomers dating. So, I'm a millennial, so I'm not familiar with the concept. And thanks for the people at the comment section. I got that was what it was about. um, so you think about the desire to belong and lying about your religion in order to belong. Have you noticed how all content creators became Catholic? Everybody, I have Sufi people talking about in praise of Catholicism, working with the saints, and I'm like, Falcon, like, look a tiny bit less vain. Okay, So everybody has to say something nice about Catholicism. Um, Even though all the people that we don't like the, how does Trudy call it, Mongol mummy, okay, cloning culture. Okay, even the Vogue developed because they wanted to have an antidote to Catholicism. So they needed, a Christ needs an antichrist. So I'm like, nothing necessarily against Catholicism, but I just find how everybody tried to suck to Catholicism quite um, looking quite weird. It's just so I think that it started with Jupiter Gemini. Um, Jupiter Cancer, I see that people perhaps authentically connect, perhaps inauthentically reconnect with kind of like the beliefs that their nation is supposed to have. Jupiter, we're still in the square relation to Saturn and Neptune. So Neptune is ideation and the mythic importance of something. Um, and so for the people that are actually, I don't know, trying to connect or are um, that see divinity in a different way, I guess, then it looks funny. More things I have to say about this Jupiter. Re-enter Cancer on June 1, 2026. So we're starting off November 11, 2025, and we're not done until at least August 2026, which is going to be quite a while. The good thing about it is that, well, the funny thing about it is that all the way up to, I think, even 15 degrees Cancer, or even more, we're going to be considering shade period. Actually, for all the people, including me, that made talismans of Jupiter in Cancer, most of us made talismans of Jupiter in its shade period. I mean, it's okay. We want to capture Jupiter in Cancer. It's a once in 12 years. The co-presence of Venupiter in Cancer happened last in 1942. There's a reason to do that, even if the election is not superior. But this is also kind of thinking about that. Okay, we're capturing a very shady, a shade period Jupiter, um, with all that entails. The beliefs about, oh, this is actually important, what we believe about our family, our tribe, our nation, our mothers even, and our conception might be revised. For example, many people, I have it in the family because we have, from the Dutch side, let's just put it that way. My mother met my father's sister at work. They were traveling, Jupiter significations of traveling, and her brother would be my mom's now ex-husband. And his father has hearing problem. And so this is how my mother learned Dutch, because everybody had to speak slowly and loudly so that the father would hear. And my grandfather from my mother's side, he escaped the Holocaust because he looked Irish. And he knew about the facial physiognomy. So my mother could recognize things through the people's faces. She's actually a trauma fascist, but whatever. And she definitely would not consider my grandfather from my father's side not Jewish. Now, this was a problem because the family was associated with the church. Uranus is in my fourth house. Uranus is in my fourth house. I'm the scandalous child that, I'm the scandalous child at the party that nobody wants to invite, but everybody wants but all the other people wants to, like, come here, come here, come here. Hey, let's talk about your family. Hey, let's talk about your ancestors. Spilling the tea. Um, so when I was in Netherlands, I was going to a church that I was channeling. So I was going to a graveyard, and I crossed myself 3 times, and then I received all of us were Jews. And so you think about Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, and Cancer being our matrilineage, but Cancer being the nation state, Cancer being, conception and so many things. When I think about it, the fourth house is also the father. The mother, no, the fourth house is the mother, and the 10th house is the father. I'm not sure, but it's both of them. But yeah, I tend to bring that not only to my lineage. I may have been socially engineering used to get some information about somebody's ancestors and the real estate. So, unbeknownst to me, and oh my God, I just think about how these two things are related when it comes to fourth house, but also when it comes to Cancer, because Cancer is housing. So, yeah, scandals paramount, but with Jupiter retrograde, it's definitely the time where people may discover that about their family. Hey, people had to pretend that they are one religion and they weren't, or certain things to do with the belief system or the philosophy of a person might be exposed. I had actually a conversation. Somebody was asking me if I'm fasting, and I'm like, "What is there? I didn't know that there is a fast." And it was like, "Oh, 9 in Av," and I'm like, "Okay." And, oh wow, that's so time passes so quickly. Um, I'm like, no, actually, the only time I tried to fast in Kippur, I looked at this during all the religious books, and I became atheistic by looking at religion. And so, yes, I wouldn't consider myself atheistic, but also not religion today. And and I just think about that time where my mother, she was like, "I know you're atheistic. You don't have to tell me that. It's okay." And I never told her a word. So you think about Jupiter retrograde in Cancer, where they're gonna know, like they're gonna know about the beliefs or the religious perceptions, or they're gonna be certain discoveries around that. Also, children. Okay, Jupiter also rules children, so accidental children might show up. Um, and more things, Jupiter Cancer, our beliefs about the family. Um, yeah, all those things. I think, yeah, that is. I think that the Jupiter square Saturn Neptune was the outing of the people of the Mormons behind the plenty of children. Okay, that we see, even in public or business people. Um, and how the Mormons played a role there, even with people that are not Mormon in their religion. So, and then, juxtaposed to another litigation against the Mormons and Opus Dei and um, a lot of that stuff. So, Jupiter retrograde, we might see another revisitation of the beliefs behind the family structure when we enter the square with Saturn Neptune. Jupiter is something big, and Cancer is family. So Jupiter Cancer tends to bring big families, or families where there are, more, just more children. It's just a fertile combination. So not necessarily. It could come with like Chiron or something like that, and then that changes. Um, but Jupiter Cancer tends to bring these topics, and because we're going to be thinking what is family, um, depending, let's say you have a combination, let's say Jupiter rules your sixth house, and or the moon is in the sixth house, so family might be a lot of pets. Like I grew an only child, and my mother has Uranus in Cancer, and we had plenty of was pets. So many animals that and I was actually thinking about that the other, a couple of, I think, days or weeks ago, and that was that I'm child free in the sense that, like, I don't take care of, I don't have my own children, but when I was in my teenagehood, I was taking care of so many pets that that it was like basically, my caregiving went there, and I was young and competent, okay, to do that. Um, and so that is kind of like how that came about, where my parent would have a Uranus conjoining my moon in Cancer, or even the fact that I would tend to fertility through tending to my business before COVID, and I was doing holistic medicine, so kind of like aromatherapy and stuff, because I had to grow my business, and it's like growing a child, and I was like, well, I find it difficult to caretake for another living creature, and I was like, where is that even coming from? Well, my caregiving okay, went to those areas, so that can be another thing that we might be thinking about, where people might not have seen themselves as being a caregiver, and they may find out that they actually are. Or Jupiter also rules schools and education, so many people have educated many people, whether it's in elementary school or academic schools, or even academia, that everything is now called academia, okay? So is the many people that they were teaching were kind of like the children that they were caretaking, and anybody that did any teaching position knows that it's not just the transmission of information. There's a lot of genuine, authentic caregiving that goes into that, because people come to you with their personal problems, and for some people, they feel comfortable to talk to their teacher of things that they wouldn't talk about, um, okay, in another, and we might also think about ourselves as the students in that regard, um, or how our teachers, Jupiter, have actually been caregivers, Cancer. Um, yeah, this is what I have to say about this topic. Here's the unusual, or the things that we didn't think about. Um, in Vedic, in Indian Vedic astrology, Indian is a sensitive word because Indian is also, in America. But and Vedic is a sensitive word because not all astrology coming from India is Vedic. So that is with the phrasing challenge. But coming from India, the astrology coming from India emphasizes a lot the notion of the guru, and Jupiter symbolizes the husband of a woman, um, because it symbolizes the guru, and the ninth division, which is associated with Jupiter, is actually a chart that we open to see the marital relations. So, how important is the philosophy, religion, teaching relations, and yet the teacher, the guru, and student cannot have sexual relationships, and if they do it, it is considered incest. So you think about Jupiter Cancer and Jupiter being exalted in Cancer, and all of the things that I just said, all together with the fact that the husband is actually associated with Jupiter. Um, and also with the moon. For man, for a woman, is, I think, the sun, and for a man, the moon, because it's the relational planets. So that is another thing that is coming, okay, into the forefront, and the intricacy, okay, the intricacy. If I think about this, then there are things that absolutely, I'm not going to name names, but I absolutely didn't notice. And when I was learning even astrology, I was like, oh, I did not notice that at some of my prominent teachers, I have placements in their fourth and 10th house. Okay, the house of is basically a family house. Um, so that plays even more into the intricacy regarding the familial relations and the familial dynamics that we are not escaping when we go to school or when we go to academia or any apprenticeship. Even Jupiter Gemini is going to be apprenticeship. I was thinking a lot about my father, and my father likes cars, and he's very good at engineering. So you think about Jupiter Gemini and working with the parent or working with someone, and how that teacher student relations affect the dynamic. This is something I was thinking about a lot, how the teacher student relations affect the dynamic, and how the more it is actually affected, and you know and even, yeah, I mean, the more it is affected and affecting, the more we get almost into the nuclear family dynamics of one another without even understanding that. And and the more intricacy is around that. Okay, with astrology, Uranus rules space. And so it's kind of like the people that we are closest to in a very, unusual way, we take the most space from, or we think 1,000 times about every action. Okay, uh, with in a way that we're not even conceptualizing. Yeah, or if I come to have some sort of an astrological election, and I would write things in my way, and I'm half channeling, and you see, it's kind of like resistance. It's kind of like, yeah, of course, I take charge. I'm sovereign and about what I'm going to do. so, and so the many expectations that people come with, as well. All things Jupiter Cancer and Jupiter Gemini. So yeah, it's like when things become. Yeah, this is something I actually haven't quite considered, um, of how those things play a part as well in life. Now, nations also rules is also about populist leaders. And there is a trend of a lot of populist leaders, and it's not necessarily a good or bad thing. If I think about my thesis in politics and governance, my instructor was also a sociologist, and he talked about populist leaders as actually representing of the people. He said a lot of people talk about populism, and that was his major contribution, Professor Danny Fields. So that was his major contribution, was talking about populism and the populist leader as something that is good. It's like, hey, a leader is supposed to be populist in the sense it's supposed to represent the people. Um, so that is, yeah. And later I would come to the astrology and the astrology of people that coming from and going to different leadership positions, also in politics. So and some of them were indeed populist leaders. So that is. Many things. Like at first I was like, what have I got to say about Jupiter Cancer? And I'm like, oh my god, that's a lot. And it's going to be continuing with us, at least June 26th is when Jupiter re-enters Cancer, but he's already in 11 degrees Cancer, and it's only in November that he's going retrograde. We're still in August, so we got quite some degrees. Okay, and this is going to be Jupiter doing a big journey, because this is Jupiter in a sign, um, moving towards more than half of Cancer and then into Gemini and then back. So it's not before, I think, August, September 2026 that we are out of the shade period. That means that most of the Jupiter talismans we're going to do this year are going to be shady Jupiter. Okay? Jupiter in its shade. Um, More to say, yeah. Apparently I had a lot more to say about Jupiter Cancer than I thought that I would.